Okay, here we go. My name is Asher Vollmer. I made this game called Threes. It's up there. You might have heard of it. And most importantly for this talk, I went to USC, one of my favorite university. Yeah, good. I loved it. I learned a lot. For context, I started in 2008 and I graduated in 2012. And I've been coming to GDC all those years, which means that this is my 10th GDC, and that makes me your resident dinosaur. Thanks. And I'm full of wisdom. Okay, so I've got a lot to say. I'm going to stop talking slowly. I've got a lot to say. I'm just going to jump straight to the point. Here's my number one tip for going indie after college. Don't do it. What are you doing? This is a crazy idea. Later up, Jenny and Ted are going to talk as well, and they're lovely people, and they're going to pump you up. But I'm on stage right now, and I'm going to be a big old bummer about the kind of realities of being an indie game developer. First off, first lesson I wish anyone told me when I was in school is that game development is super slow. It's a very, very slow process. And this was a revelation to me because I had done a million game jams, and I loved game jams, and I was like, oh, I can make games at like 1,000,000 miles per minute. But that's not really what was happening. A game jam game is usually about like 10 minutes of gameplay, generously, a pretty title screen, and some music and sound effects, and that's like, oh my god, I made a cool game. But that is not releasing a video game. That is making a game jam game. Releasing a video game looks more like this. There's playtesting, QA, art, platform integration, reaching out to press and platforms, deciding when the right time to release, deciding who to give free keys to, getting a lawyer, making sure all the contracts are signed, all the stuff, and making time to make marketing materials, because marketing materials take forever, don't forget. And so that takes forever to do, and then you'll look back, you're like, wait a minute, I only have 10 minutes of gameplay. Maybe I should think this through before I start committing to all of this. Maybe I should spend more time making the game better, which makes the game development take longer, because the real main marketing material you need is a reason that anyone should care about your game at all. And it's really hard to do that when your game is like tiny. Tom Francis, earlier this week, one of the very smart guy, made Heat Signature and Gunpoint, proposed this timeline to me earlier this week, and I really like it. The first step to making a video game is to fully understand your game, and this will take roughly 5 minutes to infinity years, somewhere in there. And then step 2 is to release your game, which will take about a year after that. So your game will take anywhere from a year to infinity plus 1 years. So good luck with that. Also, it's game development is incredibly expensive. Cool thing about college is that it's free. Totally free, no strings attached. Not true. But when you're in college, like, you have a lot of permission to be in college and to learn things and to experiment. And like, you have this like blanket like understanding that you should be enjoying your life and trying new things and learning and growing. And as soon as you get out to the real world, all that turns into guilt. And all that time turns into like, oh God, money. Rent is obvious, food is obvious. A lot of you might be thinking, I don't need health insurance, and that is the worst thing you could possibly think. Get health insurance, oh my God, and it costs money, I'm sorry. But you're young, it's cheaper than me. And also random annoying junk also costs money. So life costs money, but also the game itself costs money. If you're lacking at some talents, maybe you're not so good at art, maybe you're not so good at music, whatever, you want to make sure that you're collaborating with people who can do that, and they're going to need to get paid somehow. So that costs money. And also, we live in a cool era where software is subscription now a lot. And if your game is taking infinity years to make, that's infinity dollars to have any software. So games are super expensive, and also, my next slide is very scary, and I'm sorry about it in advance. Here it comes. You're not going to make your money back after you release your game, sorry. This is a really sad, scary slide, but it's just sort of something you have to accept when you're going into this. Businesses move in cycles. Earlier this week, Jeff Vogel of Spiderweb Software, who's been an indie game developer for 24 years, longer than probably a lot of you have been alive, has actually seen this happen to the game industry. There was a huge peak very recently with the Steam making games make tons and tons and tons of money, but now we've experienced the glut of indie games, and now we are in the contraction. So games are making less money than than recently. So just be aware that games are expensive and you're not going to make your money back. Also, game development is emotionally draining. I'm sorry, there's so many of these. Oh. I'm emotionally drained giving this talk. So in college, you have all these amazing support structures. Teachers are your mentors, classes give you deadlines, extracurricular classes give you like tons of inspiration, and then your friends are like within a mile radius to give you critique. And cool thing is that when college is over, all those things go away. Sorry. And those things are important when you're in college because they help you grow as a person. But surprise, here's a cool fact, is that you're never actually done growing as a person. So what your job is going to have to be, in addition to making a game, is also getting all those support structures back into your life somehow, which is hard, but possible, but hard. A quick example is in the 4 years since Threes, I've made probably 30 different prototypes, some of which are up here, trying to figure out who I am and what kind of games I want to make. And most of these are in some form of abandoned because I decided that they were not worth my time, which was a decision that was made. Anyway, so to recap, game development is incredibly slow, incredibly expensive, and emotionally draining. Are you scared yet? Because you should be. Anyway, this is me being a jerk. Sorry about that. But I'm here to be real. And I kind of wish more people would have been real when I was, in college and been upfront with this stuff about me. So if you're looking at these and you're still thinking to yourself, well, I can't really imagine anything else I'd rather be doing with my life. Well, good. Okay, cool. Then you might have a chance. You might even be up for this crazy challenge. And here are some coping mechanisms for dealing with all these things, because life is one big coping mechanism. Here's some quick tips, quick life hacks. How to cope financially. Eat out less. You're all students. We all eat out at the time. Stop it. Stop what you're doing. Learn what food you love to eat out the most, and learn how to make it. And then you can buy all the products in bulk, and you'll save a ton of money, and you can be indie for longer. Also, use your freezer. This is a huge, look up Google how to use your freezer effectively. This is a huge thing. It's going to save you $1 million, and bike instead of using a car. And also rev share if you can't pay people up front, but make sure that you're doing it ethically. Always pay people for their work. Make sure that they can support that. That's coping financially. Here's how to cope emotionally. I'm running out of time, sorry. Make time for people. Cool, you're making a game. It's your whole lifeblood. If it fails, you fail. I'm sorry. But make sure you have time for the people in your life because you will feel so isolated otherwise. Make time for exercise. Another cool life hack. Instant you feel better when you exercise. Who knew? Take classes. Like I said, you're never done growing. Improv, pottery, doesn't matter. And finally, reevaluate regularly how you're doing. How is the process? What's it like? Has this been good? Don't reevaluate daily, hourly. That's a mistake. I've made that mistake. Look back on the week or the month and be like, was this a good plan? And then make a new plan and then stick with it. And here's how you cope with the passage of time. You don't. Sorry. Be young, I guess. You did it. Anyway, I just want to apologize one last time for this talk. I've been a terrible person, but my goal is to help you find some way to cope. And look out at the indie life and see that it is a very rough road ahead. And if you are still somehow convinced that that is the right thing to do, there are ways to do it. Anyway, thank you and good luck.
Oh yeah. Thank you. Whoop. Can everyone hear me? Yeah? All right. Oh man, I'm so tall. Okay. Hi everyone. Thank you for coming to my talk about going indie after college. My name is Jenny, and I go by QDork on Twitter and Instagram. And I graduated from the NYU Game Center's BFA program for game design last year. During my time as an undergrad, I collaborated with AP Thompson, another graduate from the MFA program, and we worked together on a couple of games together. We submitted our games to festivals like the IGF, Fantastic Arcade, and Indiecade, and AP did design and programming, while I mostly contributed art to these projects. Together, we made this game called Stellar Smooch. It's about kissing and loneliness in space. Stellar Smooch got an IGF nomination for Best Student Game in 2015. The following year, we teamed up again to make Beglitched, a pastel match-3 roguelike about insecurity in computers and ourselves. Beglitched won Best Student Game at the IGF in 2016, so those are a couple of games AP and I worked on together. I also like to code and design games on my own, so here are some projects I made solo. This is a game I made for a class where you have to put on your makeup in 10 seconds or less. It's called Morning Makeup Madness. And here's another game where you have to put this noodly limbed avatar through a series of challenging workout poses. For my capstone project, I started working on a personal game about dieting. It's called Consume Me, and it's still a work in progress. While I was in school, I posted my work in progress in game development to social media, and that helped me get my name out there. It all led to awards and getting opportunities to give talks about my work. By a lot of people's definition of success, they might think I'm successful. But you're also thinking, hey, maybe she just worked really hard and put in a lot of effort to get to where she is. Well, I think we know that's not the entire story. Has anyone heard of survivorship bias? Here's a comic which pretty much sums it up. So survivorship bias is a cognitive bias that occurs when someone tries to make a decision based on past successes while ignoring past failures. Popular media often tells us the story of this determined individual who pursues their dreams and beats the odds. There's much less of a focus on the many people that may be similarly skilled and determined but fail to ever find success because of factors beyond their own control or other seemingly random events. And this creates a false perception that anyone can achieve great things if they just have the ability and make the effort. Hard work and effort do matter, but there's more to success than just that. A lot of people are going to talk about their success, but not mention the advantages and privileges they have. So here are some that you may have never realized I even had. First of all, I don't require any food or sleep. I can pull all-nighters, and I just happen to be born with an unlimited resource of energy, talent, and creativity. I have never ever felt depressed or sad or hopeless in my entire life, not even in a single day. And I'm the life of the party both online and offline. I've never felt lonely, and I definitely don't have social anxiety or anything. Finally, I'm also undying and perfect, the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the end. So if you haven't realized it at this point, basically success is something you're born with. And if you aren't born successful, I'm sorry, I can't help you. You better just leave this talk. Okay, that was a joke. I hope you got that it was a joke. But here are some real disclaimers I'm going to mention. Yes, I worked really hard and put in a lot of effort to get to where I am, but I would be nowhere without these privileges and advantages. I graduated from a great university without student loans. I didn't have to worry about my living situation after I graduated. My parents lived in the city, and I lived with them during part of my time at NYU. I got to collaborate with some pretty fantastic people. My school gave me access to a lot of good resources, like professors and friends, and I couldn't have made any of these award-winning games without AP. Beglitch gave me a safety net. It made me enough money, which meant I had some time to experiment and continue making my own stuff. And to reiterate and put everything into context, I got to do what I do because I graduated school without this pressure of finding a job and supporting myself financially immediately. So just remember to put success into context when you hear other people talk about their success stories. Stuff that worked for me might not work for you, and your path to success might not look like mine. However, it doesn't mean that you can't succeed. This advice is probably going to be more useful if you have certain similar circumstances to mine. However, you still might be able to take away some of these points, even if we don't have a lot in common. Because at the end of the day, success still ultimately boils down to luck, like winning the lottery. And though I can't tell you how to win the lottery, I can give you advice on how to buy some more lottery tickets. So a lot of you who want to go indie might have this mindset. I want to pour in the next 5 years of my life and all of my savings into making this one game. And you better believe it's going to be all worth it in the end. My first piece of advice is don't try to make that ultimate game. Your thesis project won't be the end-all, be-all. It's a common mistake. Making the ultimate game was the reason why I wanted to go indie. Consumi was my capstone project, and I was doing everything on my own. I was coding, designing, and doing art. I wanted to take Consumi and finish it by myself. But I had a lot of trouble being my own boss. I didn't know how to work on a big project by myself. I struggled with planning out a large, ambitious game, with time management, with setting deadlines I could follow through on. I constantly felt like a huge disappointment to myself. At the same time, I also had to deal with burning out. The transition to life after graduation was hard for me because I felt alone and hopeless a lot of the time, which made it extremely difficult to solve big design problems and to really make any progress at all on my game. So this is how I felt a few months after going indie after college. So to reiterate, don't try to make that ultimate game, especially if you plan to work on it by yourself and don't have a lot of experience doing it. Instead, assume that you're probably going to continue making games after you release the current one you're working on. So it's time to scope down. Smaller projects let you explore your ideas in a less risky way. Think about spending 1 month on exploring one design idea versus 5 years. 1 month is way less risky, duh. And each project you work on and release is like buying another lottery ticket. However, the more tickets you buy, the better of a chance you have to end up successful because unlike gambling or winning the lottery, you aren't starting back from zero. You're gaining skills and learning from mistakes with each game you ship. All of this will make you a better developer, and you can apply every single one of these valuable lessons you've learned to the next project you choose to work on. So here are some examples of small projects that let me experiment with different stuff. I got commissioned to make each of these games after I was finished with school. Here's Brenna, help Brenda clean her room. It took around 1 month to make it, and I collaborated with AP again, and he programmed it. It was for Play NYC, and I even made a pledge controller for it. Hungry Buddy is a game where you have to feed your friend the food they're hungry for. I'm in this game for the Luge Vipo arcade in France. And finally, here's Pipsqueak. Pipsqueak's a goofy dog who likes walking around and eating eggs. There are 20 levels. It's the biggest project I made mostly by myself. It was part of Fantastic Arcade's bundle last year. Anyway, these smaller projects not only let me explore new ideas, they also taught me how to scope better because I am definitely a person who needs external deadlines to get things done. They also gave me space from Consume Me, which I needed so I could approach my design problems with a fresh and new perspective. Just remember, making smaller projects doesn't mean you can't make a big one someday. Smaller projects can let you test out a design or concept without investing too much time and resources if it turns out to be a crummy idea in the end. Maybe someday you can turn that idea into your big ultimate dream game. Also, you can't continue buying lottery tickets if you're burned out or dead. So I've definitely been close to that there, and it was really not a good place to be in. Dealing with burning out and isolation were really hard challenges for me, and I honestly still struggle with that stuff today, but I do think I've come a long way from where I used to be. So please, be sure to take care of yourself. Those are some of my tips for buying more lottery tickets. Remember to look at others' successes in context, and even though success relies a lot on luck, you do have the ability to increase the odds. The most valuable thing about going indie for me was definitely getting the chance to make my own games and also my own mistakes and learning from them, of course. Anyway, whatever you decide to do, I wish you the best of luck. Thank you for your time.
Okay, we got 10 more minutes. Let's try to make this work. Hi, my name is Ted DiNola. Here are some of the things I've worked on and some of the places I've worked, but I'm not really here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about you guys, so let's get on with it. Many of you are still in school. That is awesome because school gives you a lot of unique opportunities. Asher alluded to some of these earlier, but there are some things that you can be doing that will give you a better chance of success both now and going forward in your career. First off, the game industry is an industry. it comes down to shipping games and making money. But in college, you have the freedom to not make things that need to be commercially viable or widely distributable. You can make things that can only be played with one weird controller, like thread setting, emotionally challenging games that can only be played with one person or in one place, like Deadbolt, or reveal bits about your life and are hard to swallow, like Into. Something like Bad News, which is that game in the bottom corner there. Literally, it requires someone to be manning it full time as well as a full time actor, and it's one player at a time. So I've never gotten to play it, but I watched for hours as they coordinated this amazing simulation. Jen Sandercock's Edible Games in the top corner stair is a game you literally eat. And then down there in the bottom corner is Coffee, a Misunderstanding, a live action play. So these are some really weird stuff, and you have the freedom to do it. Don't just use your projects as a way to like make things that you think are kind of cool and simulate games you love. Make weird stuff as much as possible. One way you can do that is participating in game jams. Game jams. There are literally hundreds of these all the time. They are online. They are local. I strongly recommend, if you have one nearby, go physically and work with people. But definitely participate in any way you can. It's a great opportunity to experiment, try out different mechanics in a really safe space. And some of those ideas can turn into bigger things. All of you here are really ahead of the game because you've come out to an event. You've been meeting people and talking to folks and building those connections. But find local game meetups in your areas. If you don't live near a major city, there's still independent game development organization is a great one, and you can find folks to talk to. If they don't exist in your area, think about making them, but definitely meet up with other developers and talk to them and find out what they're doing. That kind of brings me to networking. We've all heard about networking, very important to making connections. But this is it's not a bunch of cogs and gears. It's not a transactional thing. It is about making friends and appreciating what they do. This is a title by Porpentine, by the way. And if you're not familiar with their work, you should. It's all of our job, though, to connect with each other and build each other up. Specifically, all the people in this room right now, you're all in similar positions. Make friends, keep in touch, find out what you're doing, because in 5 or 6 or 10 years, you will be able to help each other. You'll find needs for folks, and it's our jobs to boost each other up together. Similar to that is mentorship. Mentorship is like networking, but cross-generational. There are several people without whom I would not have been able to, have such a successful career. It doesn't have to be a formal process. It's not like Johnny Tremaine working at the Silversmith. It can be something as simple as just keeping in touch over emails, showing your builds out, messaging someone at 3 a.m. because you have a job offer and you're not sure if you're going to take it. But it's incredibly valuable. Feel free to shoot us all emails and Twitters and stuff. We will try to help you out because it's really scary. But that said, let's talk about going indie after college. You may remember Asher's slide. This is no surprise. Don't do this to yourself, at least not full time. And I'll get to more of that later. But here are some reasons why you really shouldn't. Kind of expounding on what these two talked about. You guys don't know how to work. And I don't mean that in the old man way of young kids are shiftless and they can't work and they're lazy. I mean, you will work yourselves to death. And that is not something you want to do. This is a slide from an amazing Twine game, and I do not know the maker of it, but it is called Retro by the aptly named Starving Indie. There are a lot of things to consider, and you haven't really had experience with them yet. You have a whole lot to learn, and there are things you can do to enable that. Working by yourself in a vacuum with singular vision, that can work sometimes, and there are several folks who have had really great success, but working with a team allows you to learn a lot more and much more quickly. And most importantly, it allows you to avoid really bad habits. Just as one small example here, this is a material graph from an Unreal game on an amazing Tumblr. There are a lot of easier ways to do this, but if that's how you've been doing it for years, good for you. You're spending a lot of time. Of course, something that we all know about is this industry is incredibly volatile. This is a chart I'm sure most of you have seen. This is Steam games released by year. Ooh, look at that. So in 2012, there were 403 games released total on Steam. There were over 7,500 released last year. Many of you may not be familiar with this corollary chart. This is median copies owned per game. So if you were releasing a game in 2012 and had some modicum of success, you could totally run a business off of that. 230 is not a small number. But 5,000 last year is not something that's sustainable. Also note that Steam Spy includes keys handed out, so this number is inflated. I'm going to talk real fast about 2 games that I released at different times in my career, what and why they were kind of successes or failures. This first one was a game with balls. You probably haven't heard about it, and that's totally fine. It was a kind of a cash grab iOS thing that did okay. But we set this game up for success. We developed it on a really short cycle. Budget was super low. We made deals with Amazon to have them featured on the Android store, but things didn't go so great. See, 2010 Amazon store was new on Android. They didn't have filtering, so a whole bunch of folks with like OG Moto droids downloaded the game, and I don't know if you try to run a Unity game on an ARM v5, but it doesn't really work at all. So that was one starred to death. On iOS, things were a little bit different. We had pretty solid sales for the first 3 to 4 days, and then suddenly I noticed sales drop off and unique user count like skyrocket because we had been picked up by this amazing store called Apulus, which gave games away for free. And so we pinned a lot of our success as a company on that, and it just did not pan out because you can't predict these things. Let me fast forward though to a couple years later. I had been working actually for like a bunch of like really large mobile social studios like Zynga, making exciting stuff, and I'd gotten sick of that, so I decided to take the money and the skills they had given me and go make an independent game with some friends. Readily Memories, we originally planned to take like 8 months to make it. We realized super early on that content is very time consuming to make, and so we rescoped about 2 years out. And during this time, none of us were really crunched except like near conferences. Most of us like had savings to live off of because we weren't getting paid actively. And we made something that I really value. Now, at the end of the day, this to me is a successful game. That said, I've not gotten much money from it. It sold pretty well, like 273,000 copies, I think, on Steam alone. But that money all goes somewhere. We had a huge number of folks to support. We had a lot of development time, and I got to make this and be very happy with it. And now I work at Oculus because that's how it works. You make a thing out of love, and then you release it. Shameless plug, by the way, this is coming out on Switch soon, so feel free to check that out. Anyways, some caveats here, because I don't want to end on a down note. And hopefully, like you guys, if you've been reading into these things, it's not really a down note. There are things you can do still. Definitely make games in your spare time. You should be doing that all the time. You should definitely be participating in jams to do that as well. Make games in between jobs. It gives you a sense of regularity and purpose, and it lets you polish your skills. But also, more importantly, it gives you something to show to future employers. It was actually a very early version of a game with balls that landed me my first gig, and I think that you should definitely be doing that for folks. This is my contact information up here. Feel free to take a picture of that or anything. And if you have any questions, reach out to me. I will help you. Or if you're like, I have a really art-specific question, I will get you in touch with someone that has gone through that same path. Also, there are lots of programs that can help you out. If you've made a VR game before, we have a program called Oculus Start. That's if you just Google that, you'll have all the contact information. We can get you hardware. We can get you support tickets. It's really great. And I'm doing this because I believe in all of you, and just like you, I want to power us all up together. And I ran a little bit fast, but thank you so much.